Curse of Strahd. As I keep saying episode. Session 7. Oh man, did we leave in this at the end of this, the players are in the worst predicament that I have ever had as a dungeon master. At the end of this session leaves them in the worst combat scenario that I have ever put players into, which they put themselves into. I warned them multiple times. We'll get into it. And then, man, oh man, buckle up for next session because, yeah, it's going to be rough. It's going to be rough. So, here's how this is going to go. Here's how this is going to go. Or here's how I thought it went. And this is kind of how I do things here. Is I'm going to let you guys know what I thought was going to happen. And then we're going to get into what actually happened. So from the big picture here, I have my next session notes right here. And so I was like, all right, they just were at the Vistani encampment. They said that, yeah, we'll be right back or whatever. And then they left and they ran away. And I wanted this moment to, I left it, I rolled some dice before and then it went well and everything. But I was like, man, I didn't want them to just get away with this big thing. They just ran away from an entire Vistani encampment. Like, that's a whole thing. In fact, I'm going to make a note right here to myself of the update Vistani hate the party now. Yeah, I'll see where that goes. I'm just going to make a note for myself. Oh, it's right here. The Vistani hate the party now. I'm just going to make sure that I remind myself of that for next time to update the in-between session notes. So anyway, I gave them some options. I was like, all right, who's going to be the one to lead the group here? Who's going to be like, all right, which way? I'm about to give you guys a list of options of which way to go. Who's going to be the one to make the call? Who's everybody following right now? One of the players, Pug the Paladin, they stepped up and they were going to be the ones to do it. So I gave them 3 options. One, to the right was a little skill challenge to go up the slant and up the slanted hill, a group check to go up the hill and be in the forest. Right now, there's a risk and reward there of losing the Vistani and getting away from them up to a spot where they'd be hard for them to follow after, but then they'd be in the forest and that's bad. So it's like a good bad thing there. They could go straight into the woods and be easier to follow because they would stay out of the woods. Sorry, they would go. There was a clearing between the woods, between the 2 sections of woods. They could go down that path and try and run away in an easier traveled path, but that also means it's easier for the Vistani to follow them, right? And I was like, okay. And then the third option was just go into the forest and just run into the forest, and it's kind of like the middle ground of everything, right? So here we go. And I had all the different scenarios, and if you're interested in seeing what the different scenarios are right here, then they're all right here. But this is basically the outcomes. The right path was a skill challenge. It was a group DC of 60. They actually did a pretty good job of that, and they described some cool things to kind of clear some of the disadvantage of the checks that I had for them. But that's a whole nother. That would be a video on the main challenge or on the main channel of how I ran this whole thing off, or how I run those types of things. It's basically 5 people making one check, and they add all their checks together, right? But they can creatively describe something else. If you don't creatively describe something else, you make an athletics check with disadvantage because you're trying to climb up this thing, right? So if you don't think outside the box, athletics check disadvantage. If you do, you describe athletically something else, or you describe some other skill check, you can make that skill check in place of it, right? Think creatively, I don't know. And then they made it, they got up the thing, and now that cleared them from the Vistani pretty much. Like, they're like, all right, cool, we're away and out of the Vistani, but now they're in the woods. So they're in the woods, and I ran them through this little forest mongrel ambush encounter where I had a little bait and trap thing, and they didn't fall for it, and they got away. And then they avoided an encounter there from some interesting little, like, okay, they didn't take the bait, but they also just succeeded at the skill challenge. So I didn't want them to succeed at the skill challenge right into something bad, because that's kind of that would be a bad feel. So I rewarded their success in that moment. And then they had to take a long rest, and rations. There we go. I gotta go back up and check in on the rations. Update rations. Oh yeah, y'all can see it. Update rations here's how they traveled. Well, I guess you guys don't see the map and I don't have it pulled up here, but basically they traveled to the Vistani camp. They went into the woods. They backtracked their way down back to the road to find their way there, which was some good navigation abilities. And then they re-traveled through the road, took the path away from the Vistani, and then set up camp there. So that's really, to talk it out, that was 1 day of travel to get to where they got to, stopped. They re-tracked through the road to get to the spot right before the bridge, the extra day, and then they got to the spot where that now 2 extra days. So that's two days of rations. Cool. All right. So anyway, they did that, and they were all fine. And now we lead us back to my main curse. This also, for the record, I forgot to say this at the beginning, how this works. This is a breakdown recap of the session. If you want to see the live play of the sessions, or you want access to the Dungeon Master Binder and want to go next level to help this whole thing be possible, this whole second channel is fueled by my Patreon. All of that stuff is available on Patreon for you to check out. Link's always in the description. So this is the campaign log right here, and then they were in the lands of Barovia. This is every single section of the entire campaign, and they went to the black carriage. They saw the black carriage, and then they went to the Bridge of Gargoyles, right? So they saw the gargoyles on the bridge. This was a super easy encounter. This was a Theater of the Mind encounter, and this was my stat block for the gargoyle. It was super simple. That's all it was, right? I didn't want to have this be a combat. That's not what I was trying to run. I didn't want to run as a combat. All these gargoyles were trying to do is pick the players up and throw them off the ledge. That's it. That's all they're trying to do. I ran it off almost more like a skill challenge than I did a real combat, right? So gargoyles were trying to pick up the players and they throw them off the ledge, and they had this whole. They picked up a player. They go to throw them off the edge. I was like, I will give you one chance here, and that as they swoop down to pick up your friend, there's one window you can make an attack. The barbarian with the bludgeoning two-hander makes an attack, deals 24 damage in one hit, which gets doubled because of the vulnerable to bludgeoning damage situation. The 24 damage gets doubled to 48 damage, which is enough to kill it in one hit, and saved her friend's life for sure, because these things are crazy. I'm going to drop you off, because also, if you didn't know, they're on a bridge with these gargoyles. These gargoyles animated, they came to life, and they slowly came to life and then took off and flew. Their only thing was to drop them off the bridge. That was literally it. It was like a 1,000-foot bridge is what I call it, a 1,000-foot drop to the waters below, and it would have been for sure just a straight up dead. And every time I rolled in front of the board, I was like, this is real bad. When the gargoyle swooped down, all it did was get one check to make a grapple check against that person, and I rolled it in front of the table every time. And one time I rolled a 19 and it was bad, and they got it, but then they always did something to be able to save it. So it was some clutch moves and some good little tension here in this little gargoyle fight. They figured out the whole thing and beat it, so that was awesome. And then they moved on forward. They got to Strahd's place. They got to the branch that to the right is the Castle Ravenloft, and to the left is on where you're going. There's a cool moment there where they're like, oh man, nope, and they kept going, right? So I thought that I really loved that. And then they now got to the spot where they're at the old bone grinder down here. I don't know why it's down here in the chapter. It should be right here. Anyway, so now they're in the old bone grinder. I did this live. I prepped this entire thing in live streams on my main channel, and so that's going to be next session's entirely thing is going to just be this. So if you want to see how that whole thing was set up, you can check that out. But here's how it went down, because man, oh man, was this rough. I described the whole thing to them, and here's the warning signs I gave them. I gave them multiple warning signs to let them know that this is bad. One, they know that ravens are good and ravens are allies. They figured that out from the clues earlier and from the Madame Ava's tarot card reading. So they know that. And then I had a raven fly as they're walking towards the old bone grinder, which I just called it the Windmill. I did not call it old bone grinder. As they're moving towards the Windmill, I had the raven fly past them and caw, and caw at them, and flap and flutter, and then stop and look at them intently, and then wait to see what they said. As soon as one of the players says, maybe they're telling us that we have to go back because it's too dangerous or something, it flew down to that player, flew around them and flapped, caw, and then flew back up to the perch, and then flew the opposite direction that lead them in the other way, and then nothing from the players, or they're like, nah, well, maybe that means that they're out, and so they rationalize that maybe it's not that bad. So that's one. Keep that in mind. But what that raven's really doing is going to get reinforcements, because man, oh man, are they going to need them, right? So there's that. And then they go forward. They see these little small stick figures hanging from trees, which is creepy. And then they keep going forward. And then a really cool moment happened. The cleric of the group pulled out, cast a new spell that I did not know they had. They just got it. They just picked it, and it was augury, the augury spell. I've never had a player use this for me before. It was really cool. Wheel is a good good, like what the player does, the player asks or the character asks their god a question, and it's basically a yes or no question, or like, is this going to be good, or how good, it's like a good or bad question, right? Like an 8-ball type situation, good or bad, right? And so wheel is yes, good, woe is bad, no, and then there's a yes, no, it's a mixed result, and then there's a I don't know thing, right? So there's 4 options, and when they asked me, they're like, how's this going to go into the bone grinder? These hags are deadly. I'm telling you, deadly. It's real bad. It's real bad. This is very, very bad. They're level 4. They should not. These hags are in the spirit of Curse of Strahd. One of the moments where your party can TPK are these hags. It is known that Death House is usually TPK, but that's like low levels. Of course, it's going to TPK. It's low levels. This moment right here might be one of the biggest moments in the entire module where players could die. One thing though they have going for them is that it's not a full coven. It's only 2 of the hags. That is the only saving grace to where this would be just an absolute end to this whole thing, right? But I do have a whole situation here of how the fight goes, and if the fight is going, if the PCs are losing, there's some stuff that's going to happen, and if the hags are losing, some stuff's going to happen. I have a whole thing that's going to be. Oh man, and the PCs are probably gonna lose because here's what happened. They go up to the house, they walk up to the house, and they sorry, the augury spell, the wheel and woe thing. So the cleric casts the spell, and I described to them it's a fire cleric, like the flames and stuff. And so they pull up the flames, and they look into the flames, and they ask the question to their god. And the flames roar up, shoot into the sky, 5 feet upwards into the sky, and your hand singes and burns in pain. As you pull your hand back, the fires dissipate, and for the first time ever in your life of doing this magic and worshiping Belanos, for the first time ever, your hand is burned by the same fires that you wield, and your hand is burned. You look down your hand, your skin is charred and burned, your flesh is burned. You take points of fire damage, etc., but then your hand heals back up. You're fine. I'm not mechanically. Didn't give him fire. I didn't want to deal damage to him for that. It was that you take damage from that, and that is your interpretation of what that means. So that's obviously a very bad. No, this is bad. This is bad. This is bad. Your god just hurt you, right? That's a real bad no, right? This is bad. This is bad. So they have a talk. They have a talk. They have a talk, and we had a really interesting moment at the table where some players wanted to go and some players didn't want to go. And honestly, there's a in-game of like do we go or do we not, and there's a out of the game, a meta, like, do we want to take this challenge or not? Now me as a player, yeah, I want to take that challenge. I want to go fight that thing. So one of the players proposed a vote, and they got a D20, and he goes, all right, put a D20 in your hand if you want to go to the windmill. If you want to go to the windmill and see what's going down, put a D20 in your hand. If not, then put nothing in your hand. So, do it secretly or whatever, and then make your decision. Okay, cool. Fist in the center, and then turn your hands up. And it was I gave them a 3, 2, 1, and then turn their hands up. 3 yeses, 2 nos. They're going to the bone grinder. Here we go. So they get to the bone grinder. They get to the windmill. Sorry, it's just the windmill. It's fine. They get to the windmill. They go up there. They smash a door. Like one of the barbarians smashes a door of a side thing, which alerts the younger of the 2 hags in there. She comes to the front door and she's asking them like, "Hey, what's going on? So why'd you just smash my door? Like, hello." And what I'm waiting for, and this is the behind the scenes that most people don't. Or this is what you would not see from if you watched the video on, you watched the live play of it. What I'm waiting for in my head is these 2 sisters, Bella and Ophelia. These are the other 2 sisters. There was 3 hags. Morgantha's the one that my players already killed, and the other 2 are the remaining ones left over, right? They know Morgantha died. They magically know that one of their coven members is dead, which now promotes Ophelia to the main member, and Bella is now the second, right? And then they need to create a 3rd one. So how it works for hags is once a hag's coven is broken, the coven of 3, once it's broken, the top one now, or sorry, once it's broken, these 2 get promoted and they get bumped up the ladder. This one's now the leader, and they consume a child, become pregnant from that, and then birth the 3rd replacement hag as a small baby. And then when that baby gets to be 13 years old, they become a hag. What? That's how hags work. Crazy, gross stuff, right? So that's what's happening right now. And Ophelia is pregnant right now with the hag baby that she just ate a child. crazy, right? This is what I'm waiting for. These two hags, the two remaining hags of Bella and Ophelia, they know that someone killed Morgantha. Someone killed their hag leader. They have no idea who. And it's been days. They have no idea who. So all I'm waiting for is a hint or clue that these people could have been the ones to do it, right? And guess what happens from their perspective? An adventuring party comes to their house. And then she's like, why are you guys here? And she's like, we were told, and like one of the players, the bard, speaks up, like, we were told that there was danger here and we should come to protect you. And she's like, oh, well, who told you of this danger? Who told you? And I'm just trying to ask questions to see if they bring up anything having to do with seeing the Morgantha or anything about that. And he goes, yeah, there was this woman in the town, and she told us that to protect you. And she's like, oh, you've met our sister, or you've met Morgantha. And then he's like, oh yes, that's who. She's like, oh, okay. Immediately now she knows, wait a second, this adventuring party a few days ago met Morgantha. They're the ones who killed her, right? Like, this is the only thing that makes sense. 5 adventurers standing there, like, they're the ones that killed her. They must have done something to kill her. Okay, they are now on high alert. She's like, let me go let my sister know. And so then I'm role playing the sister number 1, Bella. And I'm like, let me go let my sister know, and we'll kind of, you know what? Okay, how's it? I'll let my sister know. I'll go talk to her. I'll go inside. And at this point, all I'm trying to do as a dungeon master is create dynamic space. Create space. Right now, she's standing there, they're standing there. That's lame and boring. I was like, I want to move. I gotta go somewhere. I gotta go somewhere. So like, I'm gonna go inside. I'm gonna go inside and let my sister know. And everything will be fine, and we'll come back out and we'll talk to you guys, and we'll give you all a tour of the house and stuff, and you can kind of check everything out, make sure everything looks good, right? So go inside the house, because again, the hags know they have to be within 30 feet to gain the bonuses of this hag coven situation, right? So that's at least what I've ruled. I don't know what rules is written says. So she's like, I'm gonna go get my sister, because now she's kind of scared. These 5 adventurers are standing right in front of her, the ones who killed Morgantha. They could kill her right now. She's like, I need to go stand close to my sister so we can activate our hag powers, basically. So I was like, let me go inside. And one of the players, Lars, the bard, the one who's been talking for the group this whole time, he's like, no, let me come with you. Yeah, let me come with you. Introduce me. And in my head, I'm like, what? Oh, no. And then he's like, well, no, the other player's like, we're not going to let you go alone. He's like, no. And so I was like, no. Either he comes alone or he waits outside. And like, I made that, like, you know, that point as a like, all right, this is the choice you have. He's like, no, I got this, guys. I got this. And he's going to go in there. I was like, oh my God, this is crazy. You guys are about to fight 2 very strong hags, and one of the players is going to go inside the house alone by themselves. Woo, buddy. So he's in there. And then now she's like, and then I left it there. I left it as a big question mark. And I was like, what else is everybody else doing? He's like, I'm going to climb the house. And so like now the players are kind of like scrambling. And like one of the players is trying to climb the house, and the other one's getting boosted to climb the house. And the other one's kind of doing a certain lap around the outside. And the other one's at the front door. Whoo, they're scrambling around. Dynamic, moving. And then now I cut back in. So I go back and forth. I go back and forth from the outside group to the one-on-one in the middle. Outside group, one-on-one in the middle. I keep going back and forth to kind of keep the pacing and keep the engagement really across the board. So then I was like, all right. So I go back to Lars, and I'm talking real casual. And at the end, I was waiting for a moment of like wait a second, and I said something on purpose. I was like, yeah, you know, it's kind of weird that you've met our mother just a few days ago. And he's like, mother? What do you mean mother? I thought she was your sister. And you look really young to be a sister. She's like, well, you know, sister is just a word that, you know, some religious organizations use, some cults use. She's a sister, and our relationship is complicated in how we all came to be. He's like, came to be? And I went to the other group. And so these back and forths there, right? So I called for the sister. The sister's coming downstairs. The other players are on the outside kind of watching this kind of happen. And then she comes downstairs and she has a little talk with them back and forth. I keep going back and forth. And then the way it ended was she's talking about how, like, so you've met our mother. You met our mother. And now you come here, et cetera, et cetera. And she starts to kind of almost scold them in a way. And like in the end, she even says, I want to thank you. I want to thank you because now I'm the leader And she's like, and he's like, what? Wait, what? And so that's kind of where things getting darker and darker, weirder and weirder. And then she gives this little basically spiel about how you killed her. So, or she asks how you left our mother, and he said no. And she said no, you killed her, and like she point blanks like you killed her, and like now they know, everyone knows that they know of the whole situation. And she's like, you killed her, but you killed her by herself. She was alone. She didn't have us, and you better be glad she didn't have us, because now we are together. And as she's explaining this, her teeth start to sharpen, her nose starts to grow, her ears start to, her skin starts to boil over, and she starts to grow in size. Energy flows back and forth between the two of them, and I hinted at the in general the mechanics of the coven of them being close to each other. We'll see how that goes. And then yeah, they are alone. And the final thing that happened was the bard was like, he's like, I want to try and charm her, and he's like, well, you really shouldn't worry about, he is about to do some sort of charm situation. The hags have counterspell, and much less they have advantage on all magic saves. But he goes to say that, and I was like, I need you to make a d20 check. I need you to make a spell check plus what level spell. And I'm like asking for all these things. He's like, well, no, charm person, she makes this. I was like, no, that's not what's happening right now. Something else is happening. And they're like, uh-oh. And how I do counterspell is it's a spell check versus a spell check, and you add the spell level to the check, and you compare the two, and whoever wins, right? So you either get counterspelled or the spell goes off, right? So we had this whole roll. The hag rolls a 28, so yeah, and he rolled not a 28. And so I described his vocal cords like closing, because he's a bard speaking, and he's like, you can't even speak for a second, and as you try and speak, she speaks over you like, no, you don't get. And so she was, and then I had my final little villain monologue speech transformation, and that's where we're gonna end today's session. And yeah, and that's where we ended off, and we're gonna pick up where we left off next time. So whoo, buddy, we'll see what happens, because man, oh man, this is the most over the top, over their heads that players have ever gotten. It's gonna take something crazy for them to get this off. It really is. So yeah, good luck to my players. I really can't wait to see what happens. I'm going to run this as straight up and ruthless as I can. I'm going to try and take them all out, and it's like a challenge to myself of I'm going to set everything up in what I feel like would be the case here. They are in over their heads. I'm going to set it all up exactly. I'm going to run it off as like as a challenge to myself of, can I get them all right? And there is a thing down here as far as the how this whole thing goes, of the how this all works is, if the PCs are losing, it's not going to be a TPK where I just kill them all. That's not what the hags would do. The hags don't want them dead. The hags want them to suffer, which is very fitting for this campaign, and I definitely see them making the players suffer, and we'll see how that goes. Yeah, but people might die. I don't know. Stay creative. Think outside the box. What a weird, gloomy ending. Peace.